Prime Minister once again today is stressing on being able to improve the ease of doing business and emphasizing that. Is that the big challenge and the big concern? Or are they hung up on things like FDI and raising the FDI limits, or letting insurance go through, or multi-brand retail go through? Is that now been pushed back to the back burner as long as the government delivers on the ease of doing business promise?
Well, there's the difference between a goal and an actual strategy and then achieving the goal itself. And so when you talk about insurance FDI, to a degree it's a means to an end. Insurance FDI stands as a bellwether because it is it's an opportunity that India has had that has not been enacted upon. We're encouraged about the winter session and the commentary that we're hearing from the current leadership. But it's the larger issues. When you say ease of doing business, it's addressing some of these systemic challenges, for example, tax. Another would be just the complexity of permitting, of land use, the kinds of barriers that can be very, very challenging for companies when they're looking to set up manufacturing plants, for example.
But are companies willing to be patient? And we're talking about, the Prime Minister's talking about India's manufacturing dream. Land acquisition is a huge challenge. This government said that they would try and move amendments to the Land Acquisition Act, but like insurance, which is stuck in Parliament, we don't know whether all of that is going to translate into reality. So do investors have patience, or do they still want to wait for a while to really understand whether the policy uncertainty and how it plays out before they pump in more money into India?
Well, I do think investors naturally are going to hedge. I mean, they're playing with someone else's money, as it were, and so they're going to be understandably cautious. But investors will also look at companies like Ford, like Abbott, like Midwestvaco, all of whom, Corning, all of whom are setting up manufacturing facilities in India, who have made additional commitments, have found that where there's good cooperation at the state level. And that's an important point that you raise, especially when you talk about land acquisition, because land acquisition really can't be dictated from Delhi.
Yes.
Land acquisition is taking place at the individual state level, and it's been very heartening to see chief ministers actually speaking out about the difficulties of the land acquisition bill that was passed a little over a year ago, and looking to the center to make the kinds of modifications and/or perhaps taking a more independent interpretation of a law coming out of Delhi in order to adapt appropriately to what their state needs. And this is again where investors, they still want to see more proof. Let's remember, this has only been a 100-day administration. They've got another 4+ years to go, and so I think investors are pleased to hear what they're hearing. They need to see more proof that the reforms are actually possible. And here in the United States we have a certain amount of empathy because, again, India works through a democratic system, as does the U.S. So when you talk about legislative remedies, we have only to look inward here in America to understand how complex that can be.
In terms of the areas of opportunity, and the Prime Minister has outlined a bunch of them today, where he would like to see investors invest in public-private partnership, railways, defense, so on and so forth. Do you believe that defense is going to be the big area of opportunity?
Yes, and in fact, I would expect that once this visit is done, once the President and the Prime Minister have met early next week, you will hear a lot about defense cooperation. Obviously, the industry was pleased to see that FDI and defense has been raised to 49%. Have they made their peace
for the fact that it's only 49%?
Well, you know what? And again, with India, patience is always part of the equation. So it's met with good news that FDI has gone to 49%. The response to government of India would be, this is very good. We are also very pleased that through the FIPB route, exceptions can be made. And this all has to do with the transfer of sensitive technology. So it's our expectation that as 49% moves successfully, and perhaps some of these outside of the 49% through a different regulatory route will work, in the same way that we look to a more liberal view of eligibility under the definition of offsets for defense procurement for our companies. So again, we see good signs. We see good early signs. I mean, you can use green shoots, and it's an overused phrase in my opinion. But these are positive notes that the Prime Minister is sounding, and we're hearing him very clearly, which means two things. Number one, yes, we're building our expectations that he can deliver, but two, we're prepared to be supportive of those measures that are going to help to grow the economy, create jobs, and be a net benefit to both the United States and India.
FDI and railways finally been opened up as well. Do you see that as a big opportunity for American businesses?
Yes, you know, forgive me if I have. I was about to say, with EMD and GE, I can only grin because I feel like I was probably a 12-year-old girl when this, you know, when the first opportunities to bid on the diesel locomotives came to U.S. companies. We're hoping that we're finally coming to a conclusion on that. Either way, it'll be a winning proposition for a U.S. company in all probability. But it is good to see the railway, again, you know, attention paid to areas where reform is so incredibly necessary. And I'm always fond of sharing with people when I talk about India and how incredible it is that the Indian Railway is the single largest employer in the world. You know, imagine trying to even wrap your arms around that from a managerial standpoint. So again, you know, good signs, progress. I suppose if I had one bit of advice for the government of India is don't take on more than you can manage, you know, on an incremental basis.
You get that sense today?
Well, I think right now what the Prime Minister is doing is laying the broad conceptual framework for how his vision for India. And because he is a pragmatist, because, you know, he is a results-driven CEO, that next layer will already be on it. But I think what you're seeing is, you know, what are his true core commitments to growing the economy and his absolute commitment to, you know, the entire population of India, that all need to be benefited for him to feel that he's been a successful leader.
So you've been doing a survey within the US IBC asking people to talk about the reforms that they would like the Indian government to take forward, or what would make them most comfortable about wanting to put more money to use in India. What does the survey show up?
Tax, because it knows no sectoral boundaries. The tax uncertainty. Is that a disappointment that
the retrospective tax continues?
Well, it's not surprising. I mean, certainly we're very pleased with the statements that the finance minister made that there would be no effort to invoke the constitutional change allowing for retrospective taxes going forward. We actually met with the finance minister in late June with our chairman, Ajay Banga, who led a select mission. And it was fairly evident in that conversation that this is a legal entanglement that isn't something that literally could either be addressed with the stroke of a pen in Delhi or by members of parliament. So I think that to some degree there's still an effort to understand what the current government can do to address the cases that are currently in the courts. Right. That's a very different place to be than preventing something like that happening going forward. So tax is still something. There's a great desire for the goods and services tax to be adopted. People see that as a wonderful normalizing, simplifying structure that will actually benefit the center quite well. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done with the states in order to ensure that they're made whole as it relates to tax collections, etc. But it's the confusion around taxes. Again, when the retrospective tax, as a consequence of the Vodafone outcome, was introduced, it truly created chaos and deep concern among investors. So tax is one. Intellectual property protection is another high point in terms of priorities, because just these days anybody could claim themselves as a technology company. It really doesn't matter what service or product you're providing. We're so dependent upon technology, and what's so critical and vital to the United States particularly, and to India, is our spirit of innovation. And so the intellectual property...
Do you see any forward movement on IPR? Because India is opposing the U.S. position, and the U.S. continues to have the same concerns that they've had all these years.
Well, and the concerning part right now really is people talking past each other. Yeah. And so the Council, because we have companies that are very vested in IP, to varying degrees and in various sectors, but including pharmaceutical. We have generics as well as we have...
We're TRIPS compliant,
and that's correct.
That doesn't seem to
But you know what the problem is? And that's where you and I could switch places and give each other the exact same arguments. That's where a true dialogue needs to take place, where we sort of say, we got to stop talking past each other. As India grows in its innovative climate, it has an even greater vested interest in protecting intellectual property there. And so we will get to that point, but it is the sticking point that I believe requires the most patience and the most vigilance when it comes to trying to come up with a solution. But IPR would be right up there. And then on the ease of doing business, it's really about infrastructure. Power. Yeah. You know, I mean, Gujarat, again, the Prime Minister can boast that when he was Chief Minister, he saw to it that Gujarat is now a surplus power state, which is so vitally important to any investor that's looking to build a plant. They need that kind of certainty that they can keep things going and not have to build some sort of, you know, separate satellite power plant just to ensure that they can continue to manufacture. So, you know, and again, the Prime Minister's track record in Gujarat suggests that on a much bigger scale, but that, you know, these problems can be solved. So it would really be those three. And we got, you know, roads, as I say, seamless power.
So the infrastructure deficit continues, and that has been India's big challenge.
It really has been. But that is not, it's solvable. It's very solvable. And again, if you look at Gujarat, you can see examples of how it's been done successfully, which is why the state of Gujarat has attracted so many foreign investors to set up manufacturing in their state, because there have been, they've hit the, for the most part, they've hit the certainty, the transparency, and the predictability milestones that are so critical for FDI particularly.
So before I let you go, Diane, the US IBC is hosting a reception for the Prime Minister in Washington, D.C. on the 30th.
Yes.
Give us a heads up of what we should expect.
A great deal of enthusiasm. We're just slightly less than a week out now, and the phone continues to ring, and people are still asking if there's a possibility that we can squeeze them in to the facility where we're holding this. There's just great expectation. I mean, the man, beyond, you know, the substantive issues that we've just been discussing, the man himself is of great interest to people who have not had the chance to either meet him or to have been as close to, you know, the political activities that took place leading up to his election. So there's a great fascination with meeting him,
and
great fascination
with the fact that he's going to be fasting while he's in the US.
Yes, we're you know, making sure that we have just the right lemonade for him, and the tea with lemon, you know, to be respectful of his dedication to fasting this week. And we hope he gets a lot of sleep, because when we see him on Tuesday, he's going to be met with just an enormous wave of energy and interest and enthusiasm and support for India, because frankly, this is really about India, and I think the Prime Minister would say that as well, that he's a reflection of a new page that's been turned. And so people, while they're reacting to Modi, the Prime Minister as an individual, they're really reacting to the possibility that this could be the time. And that's what makes it so exciting and so much fun.
Well, it's all about seizing the opportunities, and hopefully we'll get it right this time around. Diane Farrell, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. We look forward to the event on the 30th at the US IBC. Well, that's it then from our special here, Modi Meets America in New York, but we'll be coming to you live in a little bit longer from now, so just stay tuned to CNBC TV 18. We've got a lot more lined up for you. We'll see you again after the break.